Hi everyone, welcome to my fourth video, and in this video I'll be discussing about the REST API versus the MCP server and how MCP server can be a game changer in the future. We'll be developing a custom MCP server with it'll interact with the Oracle database, and then it'll store the data based on the input given to the prompt to the chat client. So please stay with this video, and if you really like this video, please subscribe and like, because it takes a lot of time or effort to come up with a video. So let's go to the second slide. So REST endpoint, right, on a very nutshell, because it's a very huge topic, right, the REST endpoints, right. But in nutshells, what usually we have, right, in case of Java, so we have a controller, and inside the controller we have service layer, or it can have a DAO layer, and or it can have some kind of some processing units where I'll be calling some REST endpoints, right. So we can use the wave client or REST template. So this entire flow it has. Now typically in REST in endpoint, right, so we have this um, get, post, or we have other things, right, delete and all these things, right. So and then we'll be having the URL, so which endpoint I want to call. So these two words very important, right. Now, just remember this. And the second slide, sorry, third slide, we have this chatbot. So in case of chatbot, it has the client and MCP server, and then something called tools. So these tools are it's similar to the REST endpoints, wherein we have this post, put, and all these things, right? And then we have the URLs. Now in this case, we don't have post, put, all these things, but it has tools. The tools has some kind of description. So based on the description, our chatbot, it will take the base decision. And in this example, right, I'll be storing some data in the Oracle database without any contract. So when I say without any contract, basically I'll be saying that, hey, can you create an employee with this name? Let's say my name Mrigank, and then he's IT department, and then he's can you get back all the details. So that's how typically the chatbot it works. But in case of REST endpoint, right, we have some kind of contracts where we'll put inside the at the rate param, request param, or we'll have the request body, all these things it has, right. Now if I take the entire majority of the AI, right, which it interacts with different modules, it can interact with the the finance department. So and then it can have some data from the internet, or it does some analysis, right. So for each of them, we can create a different MCP servers, and whenever I give some prompt to the AI, it basically based on its own decision, it calls the respective MCP server. It I mean n number of MCP servers based on the requirement. So we'll go to the demo portion now. Okay, before we go to the demo, right, so I just wanted to make sure that we should have Oracle database already up and running in my system. And if you don't have Oracle database, you can go to my previous videos wherein I have Oracle 12c fully configured, and with I just shown how to set the change the password, how can you can interact with the Oracle database. Now if I fire this query, right, I can see there are two records out there. So what I can do, I can delete those records for for this demo. So I have made everything ready so that we cannot waste time on understanding, right. So this data is it's done, the deletion. If I fire the SQL once again, there is no data. So what I'll do, I'll just hit this endpoint before we go further into that, so that you'll understand. Let's say instead of David, right, let me say Akash. So let's say I'm just given, can you create a name called Akash Agarwal, and then the department would be the IT, and get all the details, right. So let's, if I hit this, right, then it will store the data into the database via the MCP and the MCP server. We'll go over that thoroughly, right, and then it will store in the database. Okay, so the result came up, right. So this is the REST endpoint I'm calling as chat. We'll go over this. So in this example, right, we can go over the REST endpoint. We can go over the tools as well, right. Okay, so the answer, it got inserted into the, and there is some kind of, okay, let's go to database and see. Yeah, I can see here, right. So Akash Agarwal, it got saved. with the employee ID and all these things. So this REST endpoint, let's go over the REST endpoint once, right? So this is my client. So if I open my client, let's go to the controller. So as I said, right, so we'll having in REST endpoints, we'll have, the mappings, the postport, whatever, right? And then it'll basically, call the service. So let's go to our service, right? So in the service, basically, whatever the APIs, not API, sorry, whatever the chat client or the, the Spring AM AI chat client, whatever I had defined over there, it'll basically interact with that. So this is a chat client. Just make sure that, we have this, chat client being up and ready, right? For that, what we need actually, we need the application YAML file. So in the application YAML file, as you can see here, I am using Olama. Okay, before we go to the chat client, right, I have, a lot of videos on the how we can set up this Olama, how we can download the models, right? So you can watch my previous videos, and then you can set this up in local. All this installation, everything, right? No need to download. So you have to download some of the softwares, but everything is free of cost. Now, now we'll come back to the client, right? So uh, typically, right, so what we do, uh, the bean, right? So bean we create. So while creating the bean, basically we have to tell the tools. Basically, we have to register the MCP host, right? Or sorry, not MCP server. So in the MCP server, right, how we basically register it, we have something called tool callback. So in the tool callback, we are providing into the chat client so that, we now this chat client, it will have now the intelligence, hey, those tools I have registered, right? Tools is nothing but, some kind of, you can think about some of the REST endpoints, right? So now this our chatbot, basically our LLM model, it has, some visibility on the tools whichever or MCP servers which I have defined, um, you know and then whenever I ask some questions, so it can interact with them. So this is what it typically this tool callback it's doing, right? And this tool callback, from where it's getting the data. So if you go to the application YAML file, I have, the client, MCP client, and inside that toolback, right? In the toolback, I have two different types. One is SSE and STDIO. In my last video, I have explained what is SSE and STDIO, right? So you can watch that video. But essentially, in SSE, if you want to call some remote servers, you can give some remote server address over here and you can directly call that, right? And some of the remote server needs the, some kind of tokens, right, to just for authentication. You can pass that. And in case of stdio, you can basically hit some of the, local, if you want to some, run some commands, right? So it can do using that. So that is a typical difference, right? So this is the setup required in the MCP client. So now let's go to 8081, right? And then we'll go over this server. So this is our server. Now in case of server, right, so as you can see here, it's running on 8081. Now in the MCP server, what I'm currently doing, I'm currently connecting with the Oracle database to store some of the data. Now, if you want to know how to set up the Oracle database, what all things you need, I have my previous videos where I'm explaining how to download Oracle 23C into a personal laptop, and then how we can configure it. Everything is there. You just go ahead and do the setup and come back to this video, right? Now, typically, and again, if they're in a local system, you're quite good. You don't need to go anywhere. Now, these are the, some of the settings for the Oracle. You can do it. If you have some other database, you can do the setup for that. But essentially, to do this, right, you need the Spring dependencies. Now, I'm using Gradle, so you can come to the Gradle, and I'll having the MCP server and the JDBC connections, right? So these two are required for the, the Spring JPA and the JDBC Oracle database. And it's basically the MCP server I'm doing it. So let's add this dependency over here. So you're done. You're quite good, right? Now let's go to the demo application. So in this, right, so I am exposing some tools. So these tools are typically nothing but the AI can understand, or I can say in the layman words, these are the REST endpoints in our olden days, right? So these REST endpoints or these tools, uh, the AI can read very well, and it can make decision based on the given parameter. So one of the tools I'll be calling, so I have called, which is nothing but the create employee. And create employee, it has this name and department, so it can easily make that whenever I give a prompt that, hey, can you create an employee with the name this and with the department this, it will come here and does the insertion and everything. There is no typical any contract, so you can send any format and it can understand. The AI has that intelligence, right? And this is one tool to get all the employee details, right? So that is how it is. Now, if you are seeing this, right, so I need service IMPL, right? Because I have this DAO class which need to be called just to store this data, so which is line number 42 here. Now, if I go here, it's basically the Spring JPI I am using, right? So it has this DAO, right? And this DAO, it has this CRUD repositories, and in this CRUD repository, it has, say, I mean, there are many APIs they have exposed, like they have save and all these things, right? So I hope you already know about this, right? So if I go back, so once my the tools, basically this tools repository is done, what I have to do, I have to register it into the, so this is how I am basically creating a bean, or I am registering it. So while creating this repository, I am passing this service AMPL, which is nothing but my DAO, whatever the entire service layer, right? It's basically injecting over here, because this is the dependency it requires by the author repository, as you can see here. So this is the, otherwise it will give them null pointer exception or whatever it is, right? So this is the overall flow, right? And I have shown to you how it's working. So what we can do, we can fire one more, right? So can you create a record for, let's say, for example, my name, right? So if you hit this, right, so it'll basically it'll insert the data, and then it'll do the meaningful decisions. Now before we hit this, right, I just want to show how we can do the debugging. So let's do one thing. Let's stop the services for timing, right? And then let's run the debug mode. So let's run in the debug mode. It's taking some time. Home, it bombed. Login denied, invalid. Ah, okay, okay. I have to change my credentials. Let me pause my video once. Okay, I just changed my username and password for the Oracle. Let's run debug mode once again. Now I think this time it should success. Now if I come down here, so I have added one debug point here. So once the MCP server, it will run, and once we interact with this, right, it should come over here once we hit from the um, basically from the endpoint, right? So yeah, the application is running. So let's do one thing. Let's run our MCP client now. And this is the sequence. First, you have to make sure that your server is running, and then you can make sure your client is running, and then you can hit the endpoint. Otherwise, it will not work. Okay, so it got started at 8080, and then let's come over here and let hit this guy so that it will run in the debug mode, right? Yeah, you can see here, right? It came over here into the MCP server. So essentially what I'm doing, I'm just setting the employee name and all these things. So the reason why I'm showing this, because we, as a developer, right, we need to debug the code. And for each of the tools, you can see here, right, this tool, I can debug, like our REST endpoints, right? We can go to each REST one, and then you can debug it, right? So that's how we typically do. So the same thing we can do in case of the MCP server as well. Yeah, so having said that, let's run this, right? And let's go to our, oops, it given 500. Okay, let's see what's error in the client. Callback monogate. Did not receive the terminal. Oh, okay, okay. Looks like there's some is okay. Some timeouts are there. Maybe I have to change this, but that's okay. I think timeouts are good. But this is how it is, right? And let's check in database whether it got inserted or not. Oh, looks like it got inserted. Good. Yeah, this is all about the video, how we can do, the entire setup. In the next video, I'll be coming up with, the Kafka, MCP server and database. So please do subscribe and wait for the next video. Thank you so much. Yeah, have a good day.